Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is 10 o'clock here, Saturday morning, March the 26th. I was just on a little bit ago doing one child abuse survivor to another. And I like to do this worldwide epidemic of child abuse and human rights abuses show because I like to look at the situation going on around the world. This is what I study. This is what I do. I was involved in international community development course here in Calgary, at a university here in Calgary for a while, and then I couldn't afford to go anymore, so I had to drop my classes, which is really sad. But it was a great course. I'm very much interested in the issues of child abuse and human rights abuses worldwide, not just North America, but my work is mainly here in North America. And but I'm involved with some groups who do some great work around the world, and mainly focusing on Afghanistan. The Canadian International Learning Foundation, CILF, they do some awesome work to fund schools in Afghanistan. And they also have some projects going on in Uganda, right? Also northern Canada, which is just awesome. And I'm also involved with Canadian Women for Women Afghanistan here in Calgary, Alberta, the Calgary chapter, and the CHF, that's the Canadian Hunger Foundation, and local educator with. But my main goal is, and my main work is with Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. And so we're looking at national issues mainly, but that's why I like to do this one show on Saturdays, just talking about the worldwide issues, of child abuse and human rights abuses. It's horrific what's going on around the world, bad enough what's going on in our own countries. But then you take a look at the worldwide issue, and it's just absolutely ridiculous, and it's sad because in many of these countries they just don't have the protection. Even children in our own countries don't have protection, so you can imagine children in other countries that just really don't have any protection. It's just really something else. I get a lot of information coming into my inbox from CRIN, that's CRIN, Child Rights Information Network, and also from IRIN and other groups, who report all the issues regarding humanitarian issues, human rights issues, child rights issues, and whatnot, right? So this stuff pops into my inbox all the time. So I'm looking at it all the time. And this particular article that I'm talking about today, I did pop into the chat room. I started reading this article from CRIN, Child Rights Information Network. That's www.crin.org. And it's a study, and it's actually just an article. And they're reposting it from IRIN news, and it was posted February 9th, 2011. So from CRIN, and they said after the signing of a pact between Afghanistan and the UN to prevent the recruitment of children into armed forces, as well as their sexual exploitation by armed men, the UN and human rights organizations now press the Afghan government to comply with the signed agreement. And they said, Kabul, February 9th, 2011, all parties in Afghanistan should do more to protect children in armed conflict. Taliban insurgents must stop recruiting child soldiers or using them as suicide bombers. The government must clamp down on the recruitment and or sexual exploitation of boys by pro-government militias, the UN and human rights organizations say. And Radhika Kumaraswamy, Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Children in Armed Conflict, and the Afghan Foreign Minister, Zalmay Rizol, signed an agreement on January 30th of January, outlawing the recruitment of children in the Afghan armed forces. Quote unquote, we are not signing an agreement and going away, said Kumaraswamy, adding that a task force comprised of UN agencies, government bodies, and NGOs would monitor compliance with the agreement and set out recommendations to the UN Secretary General. And the UN says the Afghan National Police, the ANP, and several armed opposition groups, AOGs, including the Taliban, are using underage boys as foot soldiers. It has urged a government-appointed High Peace Council to include child rights issues in its peace talks agenda with the Taliban, Kumaraswamy said. Quote, unquote, we recognize that the Taliban say in Rule 10 of their own code of conduct that children who have no facial hair must not be recruited, but we would prefer it to be under 18, quote, unquote, she said. No Taliban spokesperson was available to comment on the issue. Pro-government militias, this is Afghan human rights organizations, have voiced concern about the abuse of children by newly formed local pro-government militias being hired by U.S. NATO for counterterrorism and counterinsurgency purposes. And General David Petraeus, the commander of all foreign forces in Afghanistan, has defended his policy of militia recruitment as the, quote-unquote, mobilization of villages and valleys to defend themselves. We had discussions with General Petraeus on the issue, and he said that they are setting in place certain kinds of vetting procedures which will require cross-checking from different actors. And we hope these processes will work, but we have to keep monitoring the situation, said Coomaraswamy. She said under U.S. law, the recruitment and use of children for military objectives was illegal. The sexual exploitation of boys by armed men, known locally as bachabazi, is a grave concern of human rights groups. And the UN says the Afghan government is committed to stopping bachabazi in the armed forces. Beyond the military forces, all we can do is to push the government to prosecute the perpetrators. But as you know, there are problems with the judiciary and the justice system, says Coomaraswamy. Scores of children killed every year. They said Afghan children have died in large numbers in the armed conflict over the past few years. In 2009, of the 2,412 civilian deaths, over 340 were children, according to the UN and other human rights organizations. In the first 6 months of 2010, according to the UN Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, UNAMA, 176 children were killed, 74 of these in suicide bombings or by improvised explosive devices, IEDs, and 389 injured. And UNAMA has also documented 4 cases of the extrajudicial killing of children by AOGs on suspicion they were spying for the government. And Coomaraswamy said there was a widespread consensus in Afghanistan regarding the protection of children in war, and there is a need to galvanize the consensus. And then they have a whole bunch of links here. So I did pop the link into the chat room if anybody would like to get a hold of that. And that's from CRIN, www.crin.org. That's a great website, all kinds of good information on there regarding child rights, what's happening around the world, right? And so then I brought up the actual article that they were talking about from IRIN. That's irinnews.org. And this is where they got pretty much get a lot of their information from this particular article. And it was posted in January 20th of this year. So it's a little bit older, but that doesn't matter. This is from the Humanitarian News and Analysis, a service of the U.S. IRIN, I-R-I-N. And it says Afghanistan fears over child recruitment abuse by pro-government militias. And you can www.irinnews.org. You can just go there and check it out. There's all kinds of good information on here. But this is where they got their information, and they said pro-government militias in parts of Afghanistan are believed to be recruiting underage boys and sometimes sexually abusing them in an environment of criminal impunity. Local people and human rights organizations say, in a bid to counter the intensifying insurgency, the Afghan government and U.S. NATO forces have been setting up community-based militias, such as Afghan local police in insecure provinces. And to date, thousands of men have been recruited in such bodies in Kunduz, Kandahar provinces, says the Interior Ministry. And the militias and commanders are hiring young underage boys in their ranks for different illicit purposes. Haji Abdul Rahim, a tribal elder in the southern province of Kandahar. Another elderly man, Khan Mohammed, accused pro-government militias of kidnapping teenage boys primarily for sexual exploitation. And the Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission, the AIHRC, also said it had received reports of child recruitment by pro-government militias in some provinces. Quote unquote, we're seriously concerned about this, said Hussein Nasrat, a child's rights officer at AIHRC, adding that his organization was investigating the issue. And the use and abuse of children by local armed groups is very worrying because they, pro-government militias, fall beyond formal legal and disciplinary structures within which the police and army operate, he said, quote unquote there. The UN Children's Fund, UNICEF, said it had not received confirmed information on the issue, but that it was concerned about the association of children with such forces due to their community-based status. And NGOs have demanded that the government and U.S. NATO forces stop using local militias and instead devote resources to developing a more professional and accountable police and army. The International Committee of the Red Cross, meanwhile, has said that the proliferation of armed actors impedes and threatens humanitarian work in Afghanistan. And they talk about child soldiers. They said children are recruited and used for military purposes by the Afghan National Police as well as the following anti-government groups: Haqqani Network, Hezb Islamic, Taliban, Tora Bora Front, and the Jamaat Sunat al-Dawa Salafia, the UN Secretary General said in a report in April 2010. Internally displaced and isolated children in conflict-affected areas, particularly at risk of recruitment by non-state armed groups. Radhika Coomaraswamy, a special representative of the UN Secretary General for Children in Armed Conflict, said in a February 2010 country mission report. Recruitment and use of children by both anti-government armed groups and national security forces was documented throughout the country by the UN Country Task Force on Children in Armed Conflict between 2008 and 2010. UNICEF's country office told IRIN. In addition to recruiting children as foot soldiers, the Taliban and other insurgent groups are accused of using children as suicide bombers and forcing them to plant improvised explosives. Armed opposition groups continue to perpetrate grave violations against children in the context of the armed conflict, said UNICEF, adding that the fragmentation of armed opposition groups was jeopardizing dialogue with them on the issue of child soldiers. And poverty and unemployment are believed to be pushing children to joining armed groups. Extremely low levels of birth registration, weak identity documents are also contributing to the problem, UNICEF said. They just don't have any infrastructure there. They haven't had for so many years, and so it's a mess, right? And the children, are caught up in it, and sadly enough, that's always the case. And unless people are willing to stand up and start looking into this and start, making some noise within any country about the what's going on with the children, they are really at risk for all kinds of abuses, right? And that's what happens around the world. In North America, we have programs set in place. Kids still falling through the cracks here, and it's sad to even see that going on in the United States and Canada. Like, we have so much money being pumped into the system. You'd think that we would have already, gotten this thing under control regarding child abuse and child exploitation and child sexual exploitation, child sexual abuse. It's absolutely ridiculous. But in other countries, you can kind of see like why they don't have it under control. It's because they have no infrastructure. There's no programs. There's no one really there to help. And there are people sometimes that do care. They don't. Quite often, they don't have any way to help those kids. And when they do try to help, they usually get their houses blown up or they get killed. Many people in Afghanistan stand up for human rights, and they end up getting themselves blown up. But they don't care. They do it anyway. They know their lives are pretty much, in danger at all times. They know they will probably be killed. Families are hidden away, and they move, house to house pretty much every night or every 2 nights. They never stay in the same place very long, and because they know that their lives are very short. But when they start standing up and speaking against what's going on in Afghanistan, but the thing is there's all kinds of good people over there trying to help people, and when they do try to help people, they end up getting killed or bombed, or their lives are threatened because they're trying to help people, whether it's children, whether it's women. It's a huge issue, and so it's pretty sad. Like, at least in North America, we do have some form of justice, some form of protection, even though it's not perfect, right? There's no such thing as a perfect system, and people would say, well, how could, why not? Well, because people are evil, right? I mean, when it comes down to it, there's never ever going to be a perfect system on this planet because people have evil in their hearts, and they intend to go out and hurt people, and they intend to go out and kill people and do whatever they're going to do to people, and they aren't going to stop, sadly enough. It has to be what's going on in people's hearts. That's what has to change. And if people want to kill and hurt and maim and torture and abuse and sexually use people, well, they're going to. But thank God we have laws in the United States and Canada which say, no, that's wrong. And I'm talking about North America mainly. There's some places in the world where, the UK, Western Europe, and other places too where, there are some laws in place and some type of protection for the citizens. But there's so much of the world still living quite, barbarically, you know what I mean? And it's just sad to see that because it's just not right. There's sexual abuse. War-related sexual violence is another issue which needs tackling, human rights organizations say. Children, particularly boys, are sexually abused by different armed groups, and bachabazi, meaning boy play, a pedophilic practice, has been reported among armed forces across the country. Despite assurances by the government, child sexual abuse will be tackled and perpetrators punished, little has been done thus far, according to AIHRC. And this is most probably due to the social stigma attached to the issue, as well as the inability of the government to fully control armed group leaders who may be perpetrating such acts, Kumar Swamy said in her report. As a result, cases of the sexual abuse and exploitation of children have rarely been tackled due to impunity and the weak rule of the law, AIHRC said. Now, children are also killed, wounded, detained, displaced, and denied access to essential health, education services by the warring parties, human rights organizations say. In the first half of 2010, 176 children were killed and 389 wounded in the conflict, up to 55% on the same period in 2009, the UN Assistance Mission in Afghanistan reported, UNAMA. Backed by the UN and other international actors, the Afghan government says it is committed to tackling all the problems which adversely affect children in the context of However, human rights bodies such as AIHRC accuse the government of promising much but delivering little. And I mean, that's the case, right? If this is what it's proven to be. The government is talking a real good talk, and that's always the situation. They want it to sound good. So, we're working on it, we're getting things in place, but when it comes down to it, and they go and they actually, you go down to the local levels, to the communities, to the areas where these people are, and the abuses are still going on. And there's no justice, and there's no, there's nowhere for these people to get help. There's no one to protect them, even, and children too, right? So it's very, very sad. And this is just the case. They don't have anything really up there. They need to. I think it's going to take years. It took years to take them down to the point where they're at right now. Many, many years, decades. So it's going to take decades to get them back up to where they should be. With countries that can look after its own and take care of its own. And it's really, really sad that this has happened, and you don't want to see this happen to any country. Africa is another country that just reminds me of an area that is, never should have gone that way. And education is really, I think, the issue. You think about the rest of the world and why the rest of the world is doing so well. And really, when you think about it, a lot of it comes down to education, right? Western Europe, even Eastern Europe, and Eastern Europe, and South America really has come a long way. They still have issues down in South America, but a lot of people there, in some of those countries, Costa Rica being one, and Guatemala and El Salvador and stuff, that's still an issue. There's not a whole lot of education there for their people, so they have all kinds of problems, right? You think about Peru and places like that. There's not a whole lot of education there, and so those countries are really, really falling behind. And it's sad. Costa Rica, on the other hand, has one of the better systems going down there as far as Central America goes, and Argentina, doesn't seem to have too many problems. And they have some problems, but they have some education within their country. They have some infrastructure. And then you look at Africa, and it's such a mess. And it's like, why? Because there was never anything set up. All those countries on that continent, because Africa is not a country. I hope everybody knows that. Africa is a continent with a whole bunch of countries, right? I mean, Kenya is not a state. Kenya is a country. And Uganda is not a state. Uganda is a country within a continent called Africa, right? And all of those countries, none of them ever got any infrastructure. None of them ever got anything going, except for the northern portion of the continent of Africa. Like Egypt and those places, right, where there was some good stuff being there, and the rest of the country really has fallen. And I don't know a lot about South Africa, like as far as the Cape Town and all that goes. I really haven't paid a whole lot of attention to that, but you just see the reports coming out of Africa. It's horrific, and you think, why cannot those people get control of their countries, all of them, and within them? And I know you trying. The reason I say this is because there has been a lot of reports coming to Uganda. The people there want to change their country. They want to change their lives. They want a better for themselves and their children, and so they're really screaming out for education. And so the Canadian International Learning Foundation is working with the groups in Uganda to actually provide education through the use of computer technology, and schools over here, like say, for instance, different schools around the world, North America, and maybe even parts of Europe, that are willing to to get involved to do the coursework with these people in Uganda. And it's awesome, you know what I mean? It's so great, because these people really crying out for change. They want a better life. That's what all those countries should be doing. And you sit there and you think, why are they continuing on to live this horrible life and then crying the blues, and look at us, look at how bad things are, we're all dying, we're all starving. It's like, well, you got to help yourselves too. You can't, there's only going to be so much people can do around people, right? They have to want to help themselves. And that's a huge issue. You know what I mean? It only, but I've been so far down for so long. They grew up that way, right? Their parents grew up that way, and their parents grew up that way. They have really no idea, no concept of how to help themselves, right? And so it's, it's fault. Not really, you know what I mean? Partly it is, because they seem to be just willing to come along and scratch a peanut out of the ground, you know what I mean, without trying to get something done. But it's very, very sad. So then you have militia groups taking over, exploiting the people, people, hurting the people, killing the people, all for money and power, right? Because of the ignorance level that's within those countries. I'm not putting them down. Issues over here in North America too that shouldn't be going on. It's absolutely ridiculous. But people, it's sad to see what's going on in some of these countries. And if we don't speak out against human rights abuses and child rights issues, well, it'll just continue on. And that's the issue. We need to get something done, right? So anybody, we can all do something. We can all make a difference in some way. Find out what really drives you and what really makes you want to make this world a better place, and then get involved in it. You know what I mean? And so many people are involved in all kinds of great things. So, and we only have so much time and so much energy and so much resources to pump into certain things. You know what I mean? Whether it's time, whether it's donations, whether it's this or that. But I would say just speak out against human rights abuses because they're not right. It just brings to light, like if you were one of those children, sexually used by militiamen, you would certainly want some help. And if there was no help for you, it'd be pretty sad. And this is just the case for so many of these children, so many of these people. There's no help for them. If you were one of these group of villagers, 300 or 400 people being raped by militiamen in Africa, in some country in Africa, you'd be screaming for help because chances are, you don't and stuff because they're cutting off people's body parts and stuff at the same time, and you'd be laying on the ground dying and bleeding and pain and misery, and you'd be hoping somebody would come along and help you. Just because we have doesn't mean that we should just be like, well, we have, so we don't have to worry about it. It's wrong for people to be that way. And people say, well, it's not our problem. It's not our country. Lots of people feel that way. And, you just have to be really glad that you're not over there and one of those people. Because it could happen to you. You could be mugged on your own city street somewhere and people walk by and just leave you in a pool of your own blood. It's just saying, well, not my problem. You know what I mean? So it's really wrong for people to think about that, to think like that, right? We all, as a world population, living in this generation, we have as far as I'm concerned, we have a bit of responsibility to each other, And it doesn't mean that that we shouldn't be thinking of ourselves and only thinking of other people. That's really that's irresponsible, really. And also, it's not realistic. We do have to think of ourselves and our families first, but then with whatever else we can do, get involved, right? Make a difference. There's so many people that are making a difference out here and doing some great work, and I'm glad to be a part of all these organizations. I used to try to do more for all of them, but I'm mostly focused on Dreamcatchers for Abused Children right now. But I still support the other ones, and I still do and to help them out and raise awareness and share the posts and just be involved with them too, because it's important not to just blow everybody else off, right? I mean, there's some great people out here doing some great work. I just finally got to get involved 4 years ago instead of sitting on the couch thinking how great it was that all these people were doing all this work. It's exactly what happened. I was thinking, well, isn't that nice? All these people are doing such wonderful work, I wasn't even thinking I could get involved, until 4 years ago. And I thought, why am I sitting on the couch? I should be, because I care, because I want to see a better world for the next generation. And I think, why am I not saying anything? Why am I just sitting here on the couch? I can do something. So then I started getting involved, realizing that, yeah, we can all do something. And everybody, we have the power to make this world change. We have the power to make this happen. And, that's awesome. And it's really cool, and so I hope everybody will get involved, and with doing whatever you can, because their resources are limited, and that's a fact. But everything that everybody does makes a difference, and people would say, "Oh, really? What could I do that would make a difference?" So many ways to get involved, and you just have to start searching around and see what works for you, what would work within your limitations, and what you can do, and that's what makes a difference. Is people helping out in any capacity, even within their own, their own neighborhoods. That's really where it does count. Your own communities, your own neighborhoods, your own cities, and then our own country, right? And then, of course, if we have time left over, look around the world and see what else you can get involved in. You know what I mean? There's so much going on that really needs attention. There's one more article I wanted to take a look at, and this is from IRIN. Humanitarian News and Analysis, a service of the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. And this is an article that came in to me March 17th to my inbox. It says Cambodia trafficking in Asia. Phnom Penh, investigations by NGOs in Cambodia have found that companies recruiting girls as young as 13 to work in Malaysian households, confining them to overcrowded and unhygienic training centers, forging birth certificates to raise their age, and paying finder's fees to brokers. Hal Boothie, a Deputy Director General at the Ministry of Labor, said the government is moving swiftly to address the abuses and that vast improvements have been made. He estimated it would take 3 more years to fully control the recruiting companies, some of whom employed unscrupulous agents who cheated illiterate residents. He stressed, however, that the government had already managed to eliminate the illegal recruiters. Attention has been focused on the burgeoning industry and the firm T&P Company Limited in particular, since one woman died at its training facility in suburban Phnom Penh, and another broke bones in both her legs while trying to escape from its third-floor balcony. She got entangled in the razor wire around the second floor and then fell to the pavement, neighbors said. The 3 people who carried her off the street and comforted her while awaiting an ambulance were later summoned to the local police station and interrogated officers who accused them of colluding with the trainees to help escape. Neighbors said, "Now this is horrible. These are people that are trainees. These are people that this is a form of human trafficking. Everybody will realize these people, bought really and taken to another country and held in areas with razor wire around it so that they can't get out. They are being held captive. People. I want everybody to know this. And then when they try to escape, anybody that tries to help them is accused of colluding with the trainees. They're called trainees. These are not trainees. These are people that are human trafficked, right? And it's absolutely sick. It says, Tola Moon, head of the labor program at the Community Legal Education Center, said the Ministry of Labor and the Department of Anti-Human Trafficking and Juvenile Protection were more concerned with protecting the recruitment agencies than the welfare of more than 20,000 Cambodians who had been recruited to work as maids in Malaysia. I mean, this is just sick and twisted. And this is what's going on. Human trafficking is still an issue, and it's always going to be an issue. And the more people speak out against it, the more that is done to raise awareness about human trafficking, worldwide, the more will be done to stop it. You know what I mean? Like, it's absolutely horrific. And he said that in most cases he had investigated the maids were under 21 and many were under 18. And he alleged the officials at the commune level were falsifying birth certificates so the passports with false dates of birth could be issued by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And the Labor Ministry's Boothie admitted this had been happening, saying his office had no control over local officials and that it could not verify the authenticity of birth certificates that were delivered by the recruiting companies. He said, however, that the Ministry of Interior had cracked down on village and commune officials before. That does not happen anymore, he said. Government complicity. MP and former Minister of Women's Affairs Mu Chow has accused the government of complicity in trafficking. The Cambodian government has effectively legalized human trafficking, Mu Sucho said. She also said the government was protecting the recruiting companies because some of its members might have financial interest in them. And local media have reported that more than 90 recruiting companies registered with the government, but Boothie said there were 33, though they operate about 100 training centers in and around Phnom Penh. When asked if any companies were connected to the government, he replied, "It is legal in Cambodia for wives of politicians to run businesses, but added ownership is irrelevant because all companies must abide by the law." And Mr. Muchua said some of the companies brazenly violate the law. Their girls are being bought, documents are being forged, they are being imprisoned and abused in Cambodia, and then they are sent into an environment where there are no safeguards to protect them. Often their passports are confiscated, they are confined in households, quote unquote. And the Cambodian Human Rights and Development Association, the ad hoc, had warned in September 2010 that its investigation found severe cases of abuse at training centers in Phnom Penh and Malaysia. Passports were being confiscated, maids were forcibly detained, and some were beaten, raped, and tortured, ad hoc said. So this is just really crazy. The rest of this article is pretty lengthy, so you have to go and, IRIN, they have some great information on that website. I hope everybody will go and check it out. And thanks everybody for being here. I appreciate it. You can check out my show page. I'll be back on again tomorrow and the rest of next week and whatnot. So have a great day, everybody. Keep in mind, there's people around the world, all kinds of issues going on, and do what you can to be a voice for these people. They really have no protection, and they have no way of raising their voice, right? It's important that we raise voices for them, right? Have a great day. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.